So welcome everyone. Welcome to this double panel called Youth Employment, Knowledge and the Labour Markets, investigating issues related to youth employment, job creation and various types of vocational education and training strategies across Africa. My name is Yvonne de Moor. I will be your moderator today in this panel. I work as a skills expert at Edukans, and I'm very honored and pleased to be your host and convener on behalf of Edukans, with financial backing from the Civic Engagement Alliance. And the pleasure of welcoming you is also on behalf of my colleague conveners of this panel, Agnieszka Kazimierczuk from Include. She says hello.
Hello,
and we have Dr. Antonia Barreto from the Center of International Studies in Lisbon University. Antonia, are you switching on your camera? Yes, there she is, Antonia. And Sharon Atukunda, CEO of Advance Africa. Hello, Sharon, yes. And you will meet two of my fellow conveners also as paper presenters in this panel today. And one of them will set the scene in another presentation. Before we start for real, may I invite you to indicate, Christian, maybe you can put on the map, the world map, to indicate the location from where you are joining us on this map. And you can use the, under view options, you should be able to see a tool called Annotate. And from there you can leave your mark on the map from where you are joining us. Oh yes, I see several people coming in already. And of course, if you cannot find your way so soon with the tool, oh yes, use stamp or draw. Under view, annotate. Several people are joining from places in Europe, but with their hearts in other places. That's also in different African places. Yes, now we can see some stamps coming in. Alternatively, you can also write in the chat where you are joining us from. And then we would like to ask you one more question, and that is, which domain do you work in? And we have another, we have a poll on screen. Christian, maybe you can put that. And then kindly tick the option that applies best to you. So are you joining us from a business background, a research background, higher education, vocational and technical, government, or NGO? You may have several domains that apply to you, but which one applies best to you? Please tick it and then click submit. And meanwhile, let me also talk you through some practicalities. This session is recorded, so if you don't wish to be on screen, kindly switch off your camera. If you don't mind, it is very nice if you have it on, so we can have a little bit more connection with each other. You are automatically muted, and kindly use the chat box in case you want to comment or ask a question. We will collect your questions as much as possible for the discussion. And if there's not enough time to address all the questions in the first panel between now and 11:30, then we will take them onward to the second session, of course, hoping that most of you will be able to join us also in the second session. When you use Twitter, and you're very much encouraged to do that, or other social media, so to let the world know that you are joining us today, kindly mention hashtag Africa Knows, hashtag Youth Skills and Employment, hashtag Include, hashtag Edukans, and so on. Can we see, Christian, how many people have already ticked for the poll? Oh, yes, that's nice. So we have no one joining us from business background. That is unfortunate because we are also talking about employment, of course. A lot of people from research and higher education backgrounds, some also from vocational and technical education, nobody from government, and a lot of NGO. So that is maybe telling, maybe for the future we need to do something else to attract more people from government backgrounds and business backgrounds. But nevertheless, you are very welcome to be here with us today. So today our objective is to investigate issues related to youth employment, job creation, and various types of vocational education and training strategies. And our panel will feature 6 papers which will consider the importance of technical skills and indigenous knowledge in relation to more generic life skills and talent. And we will address regional and in-country differences, as well as how we can learn from each other about good and sometimes not so good practices. We are pleased to have 5 papers from 5 countries, so 6 papers from 5 countries across Africa. In the first session between now and 11:30, there are paper presentations from Kenya, Guinea-Bissau, and Nigeria. And the second session, starting at noon Central European time, includes another case study from Nigeria, plus Ethiopia and Uganda. But let us first make a start by setting the scene of the entire panel. And I would like to give the floor to Dr. Agnieszka Kazimierczuk, Knowledge Manager at Include. And she, and of course also one of the conveners of this panel. She will paint the bigger picture of youth employment challenge in Africa. Over to you, Agnieszka, in Brussels.
Thank you very much, Yvonne, and welcome everybody. Let me just share my screen with you to start with. Can you all see the presentation? And can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. So welcome everyone once again. Thank you very much for your interest and for joining our panel. As Yvonne mentioned, my name is Agnieszka Kazimierczuk and I work as a knowledge manager for Include. So we do believe that in this virtual room, we all know the most striking statistic behind youth employment challenge in Africa, but we would like to use the latest available evidence to test some of this knowledge with you today. So we also very much invite you to actively participate in the quiz that we prepared for you today. So I think we all know that Africa's working age population is projected to increase to almost 1 billion by 2030. At this rate of growth, Africa needs to create almost 12 million new jobs annually to prevent rising unemployment. However, only a quarter of these jobs are being actually and formally created every year. Youth unemployment is highest in North Africa and in the Middle East, while Sub-Saharan Africa has a youth underemployment program rather than a youth unemployment program. It is simply because young people do not have the luxury of not working. This leads to youth engaging in informal employment. So my first question to you will be, are you ready? What proportion of the employed youth is currently engaged in informal economy in Sub-Saharan Africa? A, 50%, B, 75%, C, 89%, or D, 96%. I'll give you a couple of seconds, but please indicate your answer in the pop-up question or put it in the chat. Let's see. Okay. May I ask to perhaps display the answers? Interesting. So most of you indicated half of you think it's 89%. Okay, I must tell you the correct answer is D, 96%. According to 2020 ILO Global Employment Trends for Youth, close to 96% of employed youth in Sub-Saharan Africa is affected by informality this year. And one of the main reasons is to one of the main needs is to create more formal jobs. But this is, of course, the demand side problem. In our panel today, we zoom into the supply side of the labor market. In our first panel, we will look particularly at technical and vocational education and training, TVET, and traditional apprenticeship. TVET is one of the most popular avenues through which workplace-based learning can be provided. National governments usually regulate TVET, which is offered by both public and private sector training providers and can be funded by donors, national governments, or through public-private partnerships. Most of TVET in Africa incorporate a period of workplace-based learning through an internship component. However, the scope of TVET in Africa is limited and internships tend to be concentrated in the formal sector. Regarding the informal apprenticeship, it is often an option for those pursuing trades in the informal sector. Informal apprenticeships are offered by master craftspersons, operating also in the informal sector, and the role of government, donors, and civil society organization has been mostly minimum. Despite its potential, TVET is facing a number of challenges. Firstly, TVET is regarded as an alternative for weaker students and is associated with lower paying jobs with limited options for progress. Secondly, TVET system in Africa are hampered by poor quality of training facilities, trainers, equipment, and curricula. Thirdly, TVET is underfunded and is a low priority for many African governments. Finally, there is a gender bias among the TVET programs. So my second question to you is, are you ready? According to you, what is the proportion of women apprentices in the 15-34 age category across Africa? 5%, 12%, 24%, or 47%? And my questions are tricky. Okay. Shall I give you a few more seconds? According to you, what proportion of young women in Africa are formal apprentice? 5, 12, 24, or 47%? Okay. Perhaps may I ask to display the results, or do we need a bit more time? Yay! Very good, very good. Yes, indeed, the correct answer is 12%, so congratulations. But of course, this is not good news. It's only 12% of women in that age group that have been an apprentice. But what is also important to mention that across Africa, it's only 18% of individuals in that age group, 15 to 34 years category, that have ever been a formal apprentice. There is a broad consensus that there are fewer opportunities for formal TVET, and it is the informal or traditional apprenticeship system, which is the main source of workplace-based learning for young Africans. The review of evidence on TVET in Africa, concluded for Include this year by Ismail and Mujuru, concludes, among others, that quality basic education is essential requirement for success of TVET, informal apprenticeships, or any other skills development programs. And that brings us to our second panel, which will zoom into the importance of skills, both life skills, soft skills, but also nurturing talent of young people. Skills training, including TVET programs, aims at preparing young people for the labor market to focus primarily on technical competences. Yet it is now widely recognized that soft skills as well as life skills are crucial for young people to get jobs or to run a successful businesses. There is a general need to find successful model for promoting soft and life skills, as well as natural talent of young people, and to integrate them all into formal education system and work-based learning programs for large-scale impact. But then, what do I actually talk about when I mean soft skills? So my first question to you is, what are actually soft skills? These are people skills, social skills, communication skills, social intelligence, or actually all of the above. Please go ahead. Okay. Don't be shy, keep on voting. Please let me know if you need a few more seconds. Otherwise, may I ask to display the results? Ta-da! Okay, yes. This was a bit a tricky question because actually there was no wrong answer here. But probably the most correct one was E, and you were mostly, and you were almost all there. There are actually a lot of definition of soft skills in the literature that we see in different papers, but we probably can say that it is all of the above mentioned. And in general, it's also about being the super social at work. The concept of life skills as well is complementary to soft skills. Life skills are also about communication, but also about assertiveness, self-awareness, or informed decision making. And my final point that I want to turn to now goes back to the demand side of the labor market for youth. And my fourth question to you will be, oh, sorry, I should have indicated that. What sectors are currently employing most African youth? What do you think? Services, manufacturing, agriculture, or construction? Please go ahead. What sectors are currently employing most African youth? Let's see. It's almost the last question. We are getting there. May I ask to display the results? Very good. Very good. Well, it was also a tricky question, but most of you were right. It's C. Agriculture remains the main employer of youth in Africa. According to 2020 data from ILO, youth and youth adults constitute approximately 50% of the agricultural workforce of African countries, with young women accounting for over half of this group of workers. It is important to keep in mind that agriculture is and will remain the single largest source of employment and income for youth in sub-Saharan Africa, at least for the next decade. It is therefore important to pay attention to the adequate skills development in this sector. And this will be addressed by our last paper in our second panel. So please stay with us until the end. I want to slowly wrap it up, and I want to thank you very, very much for your active participation in the quiz. As expected, there is already a great amount of experience in this room. I want to just share with you that the information for today's quiz, with maybe some surprises, we're taking from the evidence synthesis papers that INCLUDE has commissioned in the frame of our joint research initiative called Boosting Decent Employment for Africa's Youth. It is our joint and collaborative effort with the International Development Research Center in Canada and the International Labour Organization in Geneva under the umbrella of the Global Initiative on Decent Jobs for Youth. For those hungry of knowledge, I invite you to visit INCLUDE's website to access these thematic evidence synthesis papers. They are available there, open access. And I'm also very happy to announce that in coming February, we will be releasing 5 more evidence synthesis papers addressing and other topics pertinent to Youth Employment Challenge. Just see the slide. I'm not gonna read them up aloud for the sake of time, but stay tuned. And before I give back the floor to Yvonne, who will kickstart the panels, I reserve the very last question to you to check your level of energy. So, how do you actually feel this morning? Please tell us. I'm fine, thank you, just a regular day. Yes, I'm very well. I really look forward to the presentations. I'm a bit tired, but curious to learn more from the speakers. Or is it D? I'm here as I have to. I'm really fed up with all the virtual conferences. There is absolutely no wrong answer here. Just tell us, how do you feel? We're really curious. Let me give you a few more seconds. Well, Yvonne, I'm really curious, how are our participants? Shall we see? Can I ask to display the results? Yay! Excellent, excellent. I think that, okay, I think they are all ready, Yvonne. There is enough energy in the room to continue. For those, yes, for those who are a bit tired, we do hope that our speakers will be able to engage you and share some of their energy with you. On my side, I want to thank you very, very much for your attention and this active participation. And Yvonne, I give the floor back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Agnieszka, for this very fun and learningful quiz. That was very insightful. And as you already mentioned, it is now time for us to move to the first paper presentation, and it is about TVET in Kenya. Once again, we will collect your questions if you write them in the chat. May I introduce to you John Mughal, Executive Director of Zizi Afrika Foundation, and Dr. Lucy Heedy, who works with Education Sub-Saharan Africa. And their paper, as you can see, is co-authored with Dr. Jeffred Muyaka, the University of Eldoret, and Dr. Kipkuri Langat of the TVET Authority in Kenya. So the paper will be presented by John and Lucy. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Yvonne, and also Agnieszka for the very good curtain raising for this panel. I am here, as Yvonne said, with my 3 colleagues. The issue of TVET in Kenya is, and youth unemployment is a complex one and requires many people to work and work together. So I'm here, my image is the one on the top left. Going clockwise, we have Dr. Jeffred Muyaka, who works at the University of Eldoret. I confirm, Yvonne, that we have someone indeed from government. We have Dr. Kipkuri Langat, who works for the government of Kenya and is the Director General of the TVET Authority. And lastly, bottom left, we have Lucy Heedy of the Education Sub-Saharan Africa. Our paper is based on knowledge brokering, because we have evidence to demonstrate that indeed data is very useful in informing the decisions in TVET. So we have analyzed data, we have come up with a solution, and what we conclude basically is that evidence and data is something that is hard to find, or at least not in accessible formats for a majority of people that need to use it. That dissemination is not prioritized. Many of the studies that are conducted don't end up disseminated, and dissemination budgets are actually very low. That there is little synthesis happening. Each of the studies conducted in the sectors is a standalone, is an island on its own, and hardly are we building knowledge onto each other to inform big change. That there is poor coordination of research efforts, in fact, even many times duplication, and that TVET research often is of low quality and low status and very poorly funded. And poor use of evidence and data by employers is a big concern, so well also among TVET institutions and policymakers. There are a few implications and conclusions around policy, that the demand, when you look at the demand and supply side of skills, there is really, these two sides are hardly talking to each other, and hardly are they sharing evidence. That evidence does not influence policy and practice, or if it is happening, it is rare, and more could be done. And investment is held back by lack of evidence, and that also the expansionist approach, especially by our government, may not deliver impact if all these pieces do not connect. So there are a few key contexts, and I won't go through this all in depth. Kenya has a young population, a median age of 19, and the youth population is bulging. And the government of Kenya has really prioritized TVET, and the TVET budget has been on the rise. But the economy itself cannot provide enough jobs. There is always around a 50% deficit in terms of the youth population that is moving to the jobs and the number of jobs that are available. While technology offers leverage for TVET, training institutions are unable to keep pace, and many of our institutions have, especially vocational training centers, have no access to modern technology. And yet also industry could keep in tabs with the technological advancement. But then the link between TVET and industry is not as strong. And while many ideas are afloat, we know that graduates are getting out every day. Many of them are around 500,000, while another about 300,000 go straight from secondary school. And jobs cannot just cope. So we are theorizing that evidence and data is very critical on the points of use, and that if there was a solution to have data as that oil that that makes the different pieces move, then we are theorizing that this could create a solution to accelerate the change and reform that is needed. We are referring from data of 2019 studies. One was a study of 2,361 youth not in employment, education, or training from a random sample of 250 enumeration areas in Kenya. And another study looked at youth at entry-level jobs aged 18 to 30 years, interviewed 1,000 employers and 3,000 youth in all formal, informal, and self-employment. Now, basically summarizing what's coming out, first is that there is growing value of qualification in access to employment, but access is inequitable. So there is, when you look at who gets a job, there is broader appreciation of graduates of university and graduates of TVET accessing more jobs than those that have no qualifications at all. But then when you look at who is accessing, you find that more male youth are accessing and less of female, plus also those from wealthier backgrounds have a greater probability of accessing jobs than their counterparts from poorer backgrounds. So we think that even though training itself is a good thing for the youth to be skilled, but then this may not in itself bridge equity, and more measures are needed. The other thing is that jobs are not enough, as I've said before, and job security also is extremely low. The average youth from our analysis gets a job after around 9 months of graduation, but also moves within a year to another job, or they just quit their current job. And the main reason why they want to move from one job to another is because they're not satisfied with the salary or the income they earn. Referrals are the most common connections to jobs. So most youth are getting jobs through referral by somebody or through social networks. And internet is also playing a major course. But when you look at both referral and internet, we know that a bottom third of the youth in Kenya lack access to these two. So again, the opportunities available are not equitably accessible to all youth. So I'll hand over to Lucy now to take you through a disconnect and also wrap up with the kind of a solution that we think we may be proposing. Lucy, over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, John. So at the heart of this problem is a disconnect. We know that employers are looking for graduates with skills for the available jobs, and graduates are looking for these jobs that best suit the skills that they're looking for. And yet we consistently see data pointing to poor matches, that young people think the skills they have poorly match the jobs that they're in. As John mentions, young people are cycling out of these jobs very quickly. And nearly a quarter of these young people believe that where they're going to university, college, training institutions, they're not getting the skills they need for work. And this seems to be linked to a lack of engagement from the employer side. So just 10% of formal and 2% of informal employers are collaborating with training institutions to ensure that they're giving young people the skills that they need. So we're seeing poor coordination of information and data that could bring these two sides together. John, could you go to the next slide?
Yes.
Fantastic, thank you. So at the centre of this skills development problem is a lack of data to inform policymakers, young people and employers. But availability and use of data and evidence are critical for improvements to happen quickly and effectively at all levels. But Kenya has faced data challenges, particularly in this TVET sector. And those challenges include the fact that existing evidence and data are hard to find and rarely in a form that is accessible to a non-specialist audience. And I should say the data that John has presented here, which is a synthesis of 6 different studies that have taken place in the country, is a real exception to that rule. So it's very rare to find this kind of synthesis aimed at answering the questions of policymakers. There's also poor coordination of research efforts. So opportunities for research are being missed while other research efforts are being duplicated. And research is often low quality and low status. So new research methods that would help to understand the needs of a dynamic job market are not being used. And universities have not been fast in terms of building TVET research capacities. There's also a barrier in terms of capacity to understand and use evidence and data by employers, by TVET institutions and policymakers as well. However, we see that things begin to change, and recent efforts have been launched to support the creation of data to inform practice. For example, around 10 national polytechnics are holding national TVET research conferences annually. In 2019, more than 7 reports from national TVET studies have been launched. So it's a really welcome move to help build data. And these are the fora in which data and evidence will start to change policy and practice. But without support, without coordination, these nascent initiatives are going to struggle to achieve the desired impact. So in order to make sure that all stakeholders in the TVET system have the evidence and data they need to make good decisions, we propose the establishment of a knowledge broker for TVET. This is a model that's very common in the health sector, and it's critical for coordinating users and producers of evidence and data, connecting demand and supply, while at the same time collating, synthesizing and translating evidence for use by non-specialists. We envisage this broker as working largely offline, creating physical spaces where people can come together to make sense of the evidence and understand what it means for their daily practice. But alongside this work, the broker would build and maintain a digital platform that provides a permanent home for evidence and tools for practitioners. To make sure that we have the appropriate policies to tackle unemployment and underemployment among young people, training institutions and industry have to identify the skills needed for current and future employment, and the government must find innovative ways to develop better provide job opportunities for young people, and we see data and evidence as being critical to that. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, John and Lucy, for that very insightful presentation. And we now have a couple of minutes for clarifying questions. And some questions have already come up in the chat. Maybe we can take sort of wider discussion questions to the time after the third presentation. But first, let us take a look at the questions that have already been placed in the chat. What is the reason, do you think, Lucy and John, that the economy in Kenya cannot provide enough jobs?
Okay.
Kenya having such a vibrant economy, certainly relatively compared to other African economies.
Thank you, Yvonne. Let me welcome Dr. Langat to respond to that question. If you are there, Doctor.
Okay, thank you, Mugo and the team. The reason why we are unable to have enough jobs for the young people, as Mugo presented, the average age of the Kenyans is about 19, and basically about 65% of the population are the youth, and mainly our economy is driven by the informal sector. And as you had already indicated, that about 96% of the youth are actually engaged. And the challenge in this is that sometimes this is not sustainable. You could be having a job in the next 6 months, that job is not there. And therefore, the formal sector is very small, and that is the one that can consistently provide a job. So the challenge is basically the economy is basically driven by the informal sector, and therefore sustainability of having a job for a considerable length of time is the one that we cannot predict. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Langat. I think that is very, very clear and also confirms with what we heard during the quiz earlier. And another question that came up was, Kenya is one of the champions of smartphone use. Do TVET providers make use of that? And if so, how? Who can I give the floor of your team?
I can also state that basically
Okay.
the mobile penetration in Kenya is about 85%. And in the recent review of our curriculum, first, we are making digital literacy as a basic requirement of every curriculum to ensure that we enhance the use of this. We have also seen, especially during this COVID period, most of our services, including training and education, requiring of services like supply of medicine from hospital or pharmacy, is actually done digitally. So we would really want to maximize on the penetration of the telephone or mobile telephony, and to ensure that we increase the provision of both services and to some extent supply of goods. So that one is, and actually if you look at what has promoted the number of job opportunities that have increased, is in the service sector related to digital use of digital technology. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that. And I think we have time for a last question directly related to this first presentation. And that would be the broker system that you are talking about. Should that be limited to the Kenyan context, or should it be larger than that, regional or even Africa-wide, continental?
Okay, I could speak a bit to it and then Lucy can come in.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, it ought to be a wider thing beyond Kenya, but then you need to start somewhere. You need to at least prove the concept, because it needs to be a system where the various pieces are connecting. We began conversations this year where we were hosting online webinars around a data collaborative for Africa, partnering between us and at Afrika and Lucy in ESSA. And that exploration is leading to a broader conversation, and we have now set up a steering committee that will begin meeting soon. But we think that even when this data movement could be Africa-wide, change will happen at the country level. So it is important to have the view of who is participating at the country level, and how these different pieces can connect to create the change that is needed. But Lucy, you can add a word.
Thank you, John. I think I agree that there are two levels to this. So I think cross borders, there are academics, there are policymakers who are interested to learn from each other and share that data and evidence. But as John said, we see change happening at the country level. So if we want educators, individual employers, individual young people to change their behaviour on the basis of that data and evidence, they need something that is appropriate to their local context. They need to be with their peers as they go through that data and evidence and think, what does this mean for me and the decisions that I make? So I think there are two levels to this brokering.
Thank you very much, Lucy, for that answer, for that clarification. I can see there are a few more very interesting questions also related to the different knowledge and different researches done by a variety of stakeholders. I'm afraid we need to move on to the next presentation. I would like to, hopefully we have time for these questions at a later stage. So thank you very much for this first presentation from the Kenyan context. And we now move to the second paper presentation about TVET again, but now in Guinea-Bissau, presented by Dr. Clara Carvalho, professor at the Department of Anthropology, and Dr. Antonia Barreto, teacher trainer and working at the Center for International Studies, both at the University of Lisbon. Over to you, Lisbon.
Thank you. May I share the screen now? Okay. Okay, so good morning, everyone. It is really a pleasure to be here, and I believe that the discussion till now really reinforces the conclusions of this study that was mainly carried out by my colleague Antonia Barreto from the Polytechnician Institute from Leiria, who is an expert in education and worldwide, actually. So today we are going to present the case for Guinea-Bissau. Most of the data that we are presenting here has been collected between 2015 and 2017. And going on, we will start by just presenting what is the labor market in Guinea-Bissau nowadays, what have been the main actions within the TVET. The two case studies that we have been carrying out are reactions by two of the main NGOs that are working in this field, and also the challenge for the future. So the labor market in Guinea-Bissau, sorry, I'm going to try to put this in another way. Sometimes it freezes. Yeah, maybe it's better like that. So concerning the labor market in Guinea-Bissau, it's not that different from what has been presented till now. We have high taxes for unemployment, both for men and women, but mainly for women. And we have mainly unemployment in rural areas. Even if when you consider just the data for unemployment, it doesn't seem that high. What we have, it is an informal sector that represents 19% of the labor market. So most of these people, they are really based in the informal sector. Most of the jobs are in agriculture, fishing and forestry, that represent 72% of the entire jobs available for the population. And the tertiary sector, that is transport, commerce, administration, and services, it is increasing. It is already 23% of the jobs available. The secondary sector, it's only 5% of these jobs, but this secondary sector is based mainly in construction. So it is mainly in a work that is a highly unskilled one. And of course, the urban informal sector is growing also, but productivity has decreased, what led to an escalate in poverty in urban areas. So what we have, it is with a population that is mainly a young one, that represents almost 64% of the entire population. These are also mainly the most poorest and most deprived. This is also the most deprived population within the country. And they are the ones that are mostly affected by what is considered unemployment. Even when we speak about employment, as we have seen, is mostly the private sector. So now going on to, that's what I was afraid of. This is always, sorry, I always have a problem with this. Sorry, I always have a problem with this program. So going into the history of the Tibet system in Guinea-Bissau, this history that started in 1959, so during the colonial time, because Guinea-Bissau used to be a Portuguese colony and just became independent in 1974. And it started in 1959, so it was created at the same time or shortly after the creation of the first high school in Guinea-Bissau. And since the beginning, and that was a kind of an echo of what was happening also in Portugal itself. Since the beginning, it was a highly depreciated way of training. So it was considered not so not so well as going into the high school and opening the door also into coming into the university at that time based in Portugal. It was highly invested after the colonization, but even so, this idea about the technical skills and technical education persists still today. Some of the corporations that is active in Guinea-Bissau try to reverse this situation, but with really poor results. So when we come to our days, we have a reduced number of TVET centers. They are usually concentrated in urban centers, and particularly in Bissau, the main capital. We don't have a legal framework, we don't have adequate competencies in the public administration, and not even effective coordination between TVET centers, and particular looking at what kind of skills they are providing nowadays. Entrepreneurs have low expectations from the trainees, and they don't intervene as agents of change. So what we have faced here was a really difficult dialogue between entrepreneurs and the training that is provided at these centers. The unemployment rates are low, but employment is based mainly in the informal rural and urban areas, and these are not addressed by the TVET centers. Productivity rarely overpasses the minimum level of subsistence, and TVET centers are not addressing that, mainly in the agricultural sector. And so TVET is not reversing this situation. Here you have an example of the first TVET center that was aiming at the agriculture training that is based in the south of the country, and it has been recently reformulated with the help of several cooperation agents and sectors, mainly from the Portuguese cooperation. The two case studies that we have addressed is, one of them is from an NGO called ADPP, that's Action for Development, and the other one it's with the NGO called, this one is with Action for Development, and it is based in Bissau. And it is a national NGO. They were the first ones to provide this kind of training. As you can see, there is a big difference between the courses that are addressed for men and or for women. Child education, for instance, addresses mainly women in this sector, like cooking and domestic skills, while other sectors like computer or electronics, you have mainly men that are the students of these subjects. The second one, that is Aid for Development for People to People, it is an international NGO that is based in Guinea-Bissau since 1981. They are running two the largest centers in the country. We are just addressing here the one that is based in Bissoré, in the north part of the country. So it is mainly a rural region here. What you have is that agriculture is shared by both men and women. Construction is mainly for men. Actually, there are no women that are investing in construction skills. solar energy management, installation and maintenance of water pumps, electricity, it is mostly the same. So we have a clear gender biased education running on these centers. And the main problems that we have identified are four. First of all, it is a major imbalance between urban and rural context, and also between genders. Second, women are always focusing almost exclusively in gender-based training, like cooking, sewing, food processing, etc. Only 5% of the population had access to vocational training at the secondary level or even higher. And the offer depends on the capacity of the training center and not on the labor market. It's not the labor market that is being addressed. You have some pictures from what is the National Institute for Professional Training that have competencies in training, planning, coordination of all the training activities. We interviewed them in Bissau, where they are based. I hope you are seeing the image here on your right, because it is the kind of degradation that surrounds the place where they are based. Of course, they have this smart installation, but actually they are quite isolated. They don't have electricity for most of the day, and actually they are almost their activities are frozen because they have no way of accomplishing what should be their main competence. So the measures of improvement that we have identified, they are mainly based in the work that could be conducted by a coordination center. So in order to improve the coordinative effective structure, these actions should be consist of implementing a mechanism for recognition and validation of both professional and social skills, and the ones that have been acquired while at school, promoting the interconnection between the schooling system and the professional training. This should include the recognition of previous professional experience. A lot of times you have people that have been working before, but this professional experience is not recognized by the system. Integrating training based on experience with a more academic education by creating vocational schools and technical schools with both competence. The creation of vocational technical schools within the scope of official basic and secondary education. The creation of a standardized professional qualification system that will include INAFOR. We have just seen the pictures from that institute before. That is now completely blocked, and they don't have neither the human resources, logistics, or any kind of material resources to accomplish their mission. And supporting and modernizing INAFOR should be a priority in order to be sure that TVET is addressing the main questions it is expected to do. And having an official supervision of centers that are created or being created, because they are mainly created according what are the trainers' formation and not according what are the market needs. And that's it. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Clara and Antonia at the back of this as well. Thank you very much for that very interesting case of a country where, of course, usually there is not so much publicity about Guinea-Bissau. So that was a very interesting one. We have time for one interesting question, which is how can we link agricultural programs and the knowledge they gain to the TVETs as well? Should we include TVET developments, apprenticeships, etc., in the design of this kind of programs? Clara or Antonia?
I think I can answer. It's not easy. Everybody's. I'm not. Sorry. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. It's not easy because young people don't want to work in agriculture. as everybody knows. And it's very clear. Young people want to go to Bissau or another cities, and they don't want to work in agriculture, as everybody knows, most of them. And agriculture is traditional, normally done by humans, and young people they don't want to work. NGOs understand that, so they didn't propose agriculture training.
Thank you for that. And I think, Antonia, that is quite similar to what is happening in
In other
many
countries.
countries.
In other countries, yes.
Yeah, and maybe just one small question. What about partnerships between the labor market and TVET? What can you tell us about that in Guinea-Bissau?
The labor market is so little. As you saw, the enterprises
in
Bissau, and the enterprises are little. So, and the TVET is very traditional, is not innovative in our point of view. So the enterprises don't believe so much in TVET training.
Well, that is a sad conclusion.
It's not a very
not very uplifting.
No,
but that
many things is necessary to do many things about that. It's not, as I know, is not only a Guinea-Bissau problem. If I talk about Mozambique, it's the same situation, and so and so.
Yeah,
it's not only Guinea-Bissau.
Thank you so much for that clarification, Antonia, and Clara for the insightful presentation. It is time for our third presentation in this session of the panel. Let's go over to a paper from Obi Peter Onyegwe from Nigeria. He is Executive Officer and Co-founder at Youth for Peacebuilding and Development in Africa, UPEDA. Over to you, Mr. Obi.
Thank you, Yvonne. Can you see my screen? All right, so thank you, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here to talk about a specific and interesting practice in Nigeria. As earlier said, I want to also appreciate other panelists, that spoke on situation about young people in Guinea-Bissau, and also the people that spoke about Kenya. I think it's all wonderful things that we've actually spoken about. There might be a difference between what I'm going to talk about, because I'll be looking at Emoahia, the Igbo apprenticeship model, as an inspiration for youth entrepreneurship in Nigeria, and also somehow looking at Africa. And okay, I'm going to do just a little introduction. Then this is how the outline looks like. I'll look at the apprenticeship itself, what are the issues presently, and also looking at the challenges. Also look at opportunities, how we can actually do things right and improve upon what we have now. Then we just conclude on that. Yeah, the Igbo people of southeastern Nigeria are they have this inheritance right from time to be involved in entrepreneurship. So when you talk about entrepreneurship, they are traditionally known for doing business, going all out to make sure that they create change, within the family circle, the community, and the entirety of the society. And these have actually set them very, very apart, and they are very, very progressive in terms of, learning trade. They learn different trades. It could be no harm. The issue of knowing how to sew makes you just think about whatever entrepreneurship you think about. The Igbo people of southeastern part of Nigeria, they are very, very good in this. And there have been a lot of evidence on how this entrepreneurship has actually created change and within Nigeria, and specifically at the eastern part of Nigeria. It takes a lot of process in learning trades, because in system of learning trades, you have a master, and herein the mentee comes in. This model takes actually for like years, 2 to 4 years. Sometimes it is more than that, but it actually depends on which particular trade you're going to learn, or which business you're going to learn, or which skill you're interested in as a young person, either man or woman. And it happens between a mentee and a mentor. The mentor provides all necessary knowledge, skills, information, education in that particular kind of business. For these years, the person is well developed to go into the labor market and utilize the labor market, and also get other people in, and so that you can also create expansion of change, within this period. The Igbo entrepreneurship, there is this term we call Eba Odibo. It's a kind of entrepreneurship school, within these 4 years or 2 years, that these people learn how to, do business, trade, know how to engage in negotiations and travel and all those stuff. So it's an embodiment of all kind of skills, which is done informally, within this space of time between the mentor and the mentee. And at the end of the day, you see that it helps the individual, changing him from, the level of poverty to a very better situation in life. And the larger population as we have in this southeastern part of Nigeria, it's actually young people who engages in this Emo-Ahia system of entrepreneurship. And it has a lot of economic viability and also progress. I'm glad to tell you about, this picture. I got it is fresh picture. I got it yesterday from one of the main entrepreneurship markets in Aba, eastern part of Nigeria. So you can see the leather work of young people, what they are doing in Aba, eastern part of Nigeria. These are shoes they are doing themselves. Now, these are young people who, because of COVID, they are utilizing this opportunity of staying back at home to come and learn one trade or the other. In case they go back to school, they also have an opportunity. Now they have 2 opportunities in one. So, and at the end of the day, they do shoes, they make clothes, they make every type of thing. And at the end of the day, these all products are circulated across various states, even across the borders. I know some of these materials you see are also gotten in also Burkina Faso, Mali, and Ghana, and all that. So you can see this very fine shoe here is the finished product of these entrepreneurs. Where are we presently? Someone else, Agnes mentioned that, yeah, in Africa, we have a youth budge, and also John made mention of that, of the issue of youth budge. So there is serious, poor socio-economic state of Nigeria. That is the situation now, and that's actually it's what we're trying to change. Youth budge, it could be an opportunity, and it also at the same time a threat, but it all depends on how we manage it. The Igbo entrepreneurship scheme, it is still very dominant. It is, people say it is an Igbo thing, so other ethnics or other tribes, feel somehow that, would I go into it? Is it possible for me to make any sense or meaning into what other people are already dominating and things like that? So that is the situation. And also in Nigeria, we have a kind of monopolistic economy, whereby, you see one person or one manufacturer doing all sorts of things. So there is no opportunity for other people to operate within the economy. But with the Igbo apprenticeship scheme, the AIMWAHIA system, it opens door for people to create jobs and have a meaningful participation in improving the economy and also creating jobs. Here are some of our challenges. Even though we tell a whole lot of nice stories and all that, there are still challenges in between. The system is still informal. It is still largely operated within the Igbo people, and it is also communalistic. It is still from one brother to one brother, one sister to one sister, but, so these are some of the challenges we still have. I want to tell John in Kenya, if you see any Nigerian selling shops, ask him where he's from. I want to challenge you that he's most likely to be an entrepreneur from Nigeria, and he's coming from the eastern part of Nigeria. But we want to have more expansion of people coming from other, nationalities to be part of it. We also have the challenge of, finance, loan schemes that could actually make things better. We have a very big challenge in Nigeria where we have epileptic power supply. It's a very big challenge for youth entrepreneurship and development in Nigeria. It's a very big challenge. There is this issue of exclusiveness of this entrepreneurship that is only meant for male boys and girls. So it's not a kind of gender balanced apprenticeship. But there are also ladies who are entrepreneurships, who are doing very well in that. But the percentage, as Agnes shared in the quiz, it's very, very low. And also fears, I've talked about our fears and threats, to participate because he is or she is not Igbo. And there is also this, challenge of how do we cater for these special needs, people who are physically challenged, who could be interested to do one business or the other, engage in entrepreneurship. We need to make this inclusive. And we also need recognition. The entrepreneurship actually need recognition and expansion, which I've talked about earlier on. We also see some opportunities here, and some of the opportunities we look at is that there is need to to restructure this model and make it something innovative. Get in all the technological support that it needs, to face the current realities and contemporary issues we have, around us. And opportunity is also there for private, partnership engagement full time. It makes more meaning when the private sector comes in, and it also addresses the issue of expansion. And modernizing it also, just like what I said earlier on, so that it can also be integrated into the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals, and if possible, to see how we can shorten the number of years of engagement, because it's been argued that it's quite a long time, but these are also some of the opportunities that we can actually utilize. We have a Nigerian system where young people are actually mandated to go to serve Nigeria for 1 year. which is NYSC, that actually could be integrated into that. More very important is research. We need to do more research. There is need for statistics. I know we do a lot of anecdotal evidence in this, but I think there is more of, there is need to do empirical, statistics to support whatever we are saying and all that. So this is where we could actually create more, learning models and also develop more in this whole apprenticeship opportunity. I understand very well that, the government has a very big role to play here. I mean, in terms of, partnership, partnering also with the, the private sector is very, very key, but the government has a big role to, to play, to provide the enabling environment, that will give us not a perfect system, but I mean, an adequate system that works. I mean, there is no perfect system in the world, but we could just have something that works better. Just as I said earlier on, invest in more research. It makes more sense, to do this, and also review the, the apprenticeship model, so that it can be launched formally as an economic model, to support not only Nigeria, but also looking at Africa. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Obi, for that very interesting presentation. Different from the two TVET presentations, but then also we see some common threads appearing. I would like to, I think to some extent you have answered a few of the questions that came up in the chat box already during your presentation. And so I would really like to move to a more general discussion, if you allow me. Some of the general points that we have seen from the two TVET presentations, and also the presentation about Imu Ahia. I don't know if I pronounced that well. We see a gender bias that is very, very common. We also see the importance of institutionalization and recognition, maybe certification. We see a need for modernization of TVET. An importance for making things very much context specific, and also, of course, a common thing is that data collection is very much needed. Data are very much lacking, and also we saw a question coming up. So many different stakeholders are doing their own research. But how to bring those things together. So we have a lot of different threads that have come up, or different issues that have come up from the three presentations. Maybe we have time for this question to the Guinea-Bissau and Kenya people. To what extent do you think that traditional apprenticeship practices, like the one just presented by Obi, could also be used, or to what extent can those experiences be used in formal TVET education? Who may I give the floor of the presenters so far? Anyone?
If Yvonne?
Yes, Obi, please.
I don't know if you want me to talk now, but I think I have specific questions raised on my presentation. Do you want me to take those first, or you just want Lucy and Clara to clarify issues of TVET?
Well, I think you have answered some of the questions already to some extent in your presentation. Is anyone of the Kenya and Guinea-Bissau
Yes.
presenters?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes, sure, Yvonne. I think for us in Kenya, and I thank you, Obi, for your presentation. Apprenticeship has also been rooted in many of our cultures across the various ethnicities, and the last decade has also seen the system, government system, also promoting apprenticeship as a model. Of course, it brings its own challenges because where the apprentices are attached, those people spend a lot of their time training the apprentices. There are risks that are linked to it, and so far we don't have any government incentives that are going to people who offer to train apprentices. So I think there are systemic issues to be addressed. And right now in Kenya, there is a bill that is going through Parliament on national skills, and how apprenticeship can now come also into the mainstream as an option, so that youth could select to either go to a full-time training college or just get attached to someone to be mentored over the time. So we don't have, I don't have data on like what percentage of youth currently are under apprenticeship, but it is there across the board.
Thank you, John. And then of course the question would be in both in the informal systems as well as in formal systems. How do we address gender imbalances that are so very visible in TVETs, but also in the informal experiences that you have presented about? Any one of you, Obi, Clara, Antonio, sorry.
I can say something
about
Guinea-Bissau case. Nowadays, the public system, education, health, and so is absolutely dependent of external money. Absolutely. Dependent of great agencies like World Bank and so and so and so. So to do something, it depends it depends of NGO, but those NGO also depends of external money. So you see, the tendencies must change. To work with traditional things is not a tendency nowadays in Guinea-Bissau. If some NGO like ADPP, and in this conference someone from ESOR is presented now, Osvaldo, and they try to do things, but this is not a generic situation.
Yeah, may I just add something concerning your question? Yeah, on the gender imbalance concerning TVET and the fact that women or girls are mainly trained in a kind of a classic gender biased occupations. I think that also it's present in the fact that education is still now mainly a question, a sector that families are prioritizing for boys. But things are changing quite quickly. And I would guess that together with formal education, the expectations to have girls working on less traditional women jobs within TVET will also change. And I think that will be a rather quick move that we are going to observe, something that we can see in the next 10, 20 years.
Thank you. Well, that sounds a bit hopeful. Is there anyone else, like Agnieszka also said in the chat, anyone else other than the presenters may also have great ideas about how to address TVET or other experiences, the gender imbalances in there. Meanwhile, there's also an interesting question about the army. Where in Africa, outside Eritrea, of course, that we know of, are youth obliged to be part of the army for 1 or more years? And if so, do they also get TVET type training there? Is there anyone who has experience amongst you that knows about TVET type training in army situations? It's
can I respond to that?
Yes, Obi, please.
Yes, concerning, I think I need to talk about Nigeria. It could be a similar thing, you know, like the Nigerian Youth Service Corps, you know, which is a mandatory year of service for every graduate university, has this opportunity where, you know, young people are also exposed to entrepreneurship, and it's both male and female now that goes for it, and there is equal balance of who, you know, takes part of it. So there is no way the gender side goes bigger than the other, and it is at that point. To respond further to what Clara and Antonia had said, we've continued to encourage more women participation in the Imoya apprenticeship model, and very good and fine. In some of the critical markets, you know, where these works are done, women are taking leadership roles. You know, I mean, when I say leadership roles, they own shops. They have people who come to learn under them, and they pass different skills, you know, onto them. That's actually what I can say now. Though it is more of a policy thing, you know, getting the policymakers see gender equality, participation, education as a priority.
Thank you so much, Obi, for that answer. And meanwhile, also in the chat, some people are mentioning, like you said, leadership positions. But then again, how are we inspiring young girls, young women, if there is such an imbalance in the TVETs, in the learning programs? So a lot of people, a lot of you are also thinking along and coming up with great ideas or new questions. It is time for us to make a break, but please do join us again. I hope that some of these questions will come back. In the second panel, we have a little bit more time to address general questions. So we are collecting your questions, and we will come back to these issues in the second part of the panel. We start again in half an hour's time, so it is a short break. Kindly do not leave the room, the Zoom meeting, but simply switch off your camera and your microphone. And when you are back, you might want to write that in the chat. If you want an alternative break, if you don't need to eat or drink anything, you can also hang out in any of the breakout rooms. We have created breakout rooms for you in order to meet other delegates, to continue discussing maybe. We have a green, a blue, a red, and a purple room, and you can choose whatever room you like. Welcome back to everyone who was here in the first session as well, and a warm welcome to any new delegates to this double panel on youth employment, knowledge and the labor markets. maybe it would be nice if you could all briefly switch on your cameras to check whether everyone has returned from their breaks. Oh, I see many people turning on their cameras. Yes, very nice. Thank you. And I hope you did enjoy a snack or a drink, or just stretched your legs a bit. To those of you who are joining only just now, who could not be with us in the morning in the first session, thank you very much for your interest. My name is Yvonne de Moor, and I am hosting today's session on behalf of Edukans. And co-conveners of this panel include Knowledge Platform, the University of Lisbon, and Advance Afrika. And we have financial backup from the Civic Engagement Alliance. We have, in the first session of this panel, we had 3 very interesting presentations about TVET and informal apprenticeship systems. And we have kept some questions for you unanswered. But we still have them, and we hope to be able to answer these later on after the next 3 presentations. So, of course, we cannot move to those discussions without some more paper presentations. And if you have questions during the presentation, and also, of course, maybe answers or your thoughts on answering the question, kindly use the chat function. And as the first presenter, let me introduce to you Mr. Paul Michael, Assistant Lecturer in the Department of Philosophy of the University of Benin, Nigeria. He is making a pledge for more attention to the talents of young people. Mr. Michael, the floor is yours. And Chido will, I think, share the screen. Yes, that's great.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. I am glad to be on this global platform to discuss what I think is very crucial in the youth development agenda, broadly speaking, in Nigeria. My topic is on the talent career trajectory in education as a paradigm for resolving some aspects of the youth employment crisis in Nigeria. Well, I chose to address some aspects of this youth employment crisis because the youth employment crisis itself is quite a complex and a robust one, encompassing a lot of other issues that the time will not permit us to list out here. However, we will be addressing about 3 that has been considered problems in Nigeria specifically. These 3 include youth unemployment, youth underemployment, and then youth employability. According to Price 2019, youth unemployment and youth underemployment are big problems or big challenges in Nigeria. For youth employability, we also have the German government coming into Nigeria just recently through ISCTE-IU, a program just organized and concluded just last month, November. The program was about how to promote youth employability in higher education. So given this event, hello, can you hear me? Hello? All right. Given this event, we can tell that both youth unemployment, youth underemployment, and youth employability is indeed a big problem in Nigeria. And two main occurrences, two main incidences have made it even more problematic and brought it to the open in the recent time in Nigeria. The first was the COVID-19 lockdown. We just survived in Nigeria. During the lockdown, we had different groups, especially in the suburb of Lagos, and known as the 1 Million Boys or the Awawa Gang, where they went around terrorizing people, young people who felt the hardship of the lockdown because of unemployment, and then went around terrorizing, robbing, and then depriving people of their goods. That was a sad situation, but that was to show the intensity of the youth and unemployment crisis in Nigeria. Secondly, the recent October 2020 NSAS movement that just took place in Nigeria that almost crushed the nation was also an attestation to the fact that youth unemployment is a big problem in Nigeria. We find that young people, while they use the NSAS as a metaphor, went around and agitating for good governance, including employment, including young people's welfare, promoting that welfare. So these were the issues that actually attested to the fact that youth unemployment, maybe youth unemployability, has actually brought a lot of hardship to the majority of Nigerians. Next slide, please. We find that the Nigerian government has done so much. Whether these were successful or not are different kettle of fish entirely. But we find that the Nigerian government has done so much to try to ameliorate the youth employment or youth unemployment crisis in Nigeria in the past few decades, maybe 3 decades, if I may say. For example, series of programs, of government intervention programs have come up. I will just mention a few of these government intervention programs. You have the UWIN, you have the Shopee, you have the Empire, you have the Amnesty, and you have the most recent one, the NYIF, the Nigerian Youth Investment Fund. These are programs that have evolved by the government of Nigeria to cushion the effect of youth unemployment and thereby reducing hardship on young people in Nigeria. But the question is how effective, how efficient, how successful have these programs been? My research in this conference has shown that these programs have not really done so much in promoting youth unemployment or in promoting youth employability, or even in trying to ameliorate the hardship brought upon young people in Nigeria by youth unemployment. The reason is simple. This program seems to have been cosmetic in nature. This program has been palliative in nature. This program have not, in my opinion, these programs have not nipped the issue of youth unemployment precisely in the bud. And then we see the reason in the fact that these programs have been politicized, if you permit me to use the word, have been politicized, and then you find allegation of government officials using their powers to allot spaces of some of these government intervention programs to their supporters. You find that through the social media, you find that in the news, in the dailies, you find that even in the online medias like the Sahara Reporter recently revealed that the National Nigerian Youth Investment Fund, for example, was shared amongst parliamentarians, and then they were shared like in 50,000 here and there amongst themselves. And you find that at the end of the day, these youth intervention programs, government intervention program, don't really meet the average youth in Nigeria, and then a lot of people don't eventually benefit in the long run. You find all of this as the failure. Now, what is the way forward? What do I think is the solution to this problem? I think the solution, or part of the solution to this problem, would be to evolve something indigenous, something that is not merely an exportation of foreign strategies to domestic challenge in Nigeria. And so I adopted what I call the talent career trajectory in education for youth employment and employability and underemployment in Nigeria. In short, it is called the TCT. The TCT as an acronym. What is TCT? The TCT can be seen as an innate ability that originates in genetically structured or genetically transmitted structures, or if you will, it could be explained in supernatural terms. The TCT could be explained in supernatural terms, especially when it comes to the African context. Now, because this is a conference that focuses on the African way of coming out of this quagmire, if you will, I am focusing on the African dimension of the TCT. In Africa, there are traditional ways of building employability. There are traditional ways of promoting youth employment in Africa, and these can align with the idea of the TCT itself. This can align with the idea of looking at a young person and then attempting to harness the talent, the innate ability that originates from genetically transmitted structures, or that could be as a result of an endowment, a gift from the God. African traditional social organization and worldview were based on the belief and in recognition of human talent, as well as the distribution of talent-based roles. What do I mean by that? In traditional Africa,
sorry to interrupt, Mr. Michael. You have 2 minutes left only. So.
Okay. All right. In pre-colonial Nigeria, we find that there are ways societies develop their young people. There are ways they empower them. There are ways they get them engaged in productive activities. For example, let me quickly give example of where I live now, Benin City. The people of Igun in Edo State, in Benin City, Edo State, Nigeria, have a way of training their young people in bronze making at work. And you find that there is a belief that this skill for bronze making was given by the gods to help the society function properly. And we find that everywhere, where you have in the eastern part of Nigeria, where Obi just addressed, where we have the gun making skill by the Oka people. People naturally are gifted in making certain crafts. So we find that everywhere in Nigeria. So the point that we are making is that the Nigerian context should endeavor to develop, to nurture these natural abilities in young people, and so that employment can be promoted, employability can be promoted. And then and lastly, because of my time, I wouldn't want to go into the suggestion is this: in education, our education should refocus, should move away from doing what my society calls lucrative courses, and then pushing the majority of young people into doing certain courses they thought are lucrative. But they should allow young people to focus on their flair, on their natural abilities, and then nurture these natural abilities, and then enrollment in the universities, and then in the colleges of education, and then in our higher institutions should be based on the identification of the talent of individuals, and then the nurturing of these talents. That way, employment will be promoted, employability, I believe, will be promoted, underemployment will be minimized. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Michael. That was a very fast conclusion of your presentation. Thank you very much. That was very interesting. We have time for one clarifying question. I don't see anything yet in the chat, but maybe.
When do you think we can pick up?
Was there anyone wanted to come in with a clarifying question? I have this question for you, Mr. Michael. How would the current education system in Nigeria would need to change in order to properly address the talent development in their curricula?
Well, what my work focuses on was to raise certain problems. I believe that people in education and curriculum development may have an answer to this. However, I have a suggestion to this. What I want to say is that the societal expectation needs to reduce in terms of the way the older people influence and put pressure on young people to make choices in their educational career. There needs to be, the older people need to step down the way they put pressure on them. And so the educational system also needs to adapt its curriculum to the development of individual talent. For now, that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much, Paul, for this presentation. For the sake of time, I would really like to move to the next presentation. And that is about life skills with a case study from Ethiopia. It is presented by my colleague at Edukans, social emotional learning special and life skills specialist Anik Santema, and Mariama Ismail, who did her internship and master thesis research with Edukans Life Skills program, and she has now graduated. Over to you, Amersfoort.
Thank you, Yvonne, for that introduction. Can I just check if you can hear both of us?
Yeah, we just I'm audible well now.
We hear Anik more clearly.
Okay, I think.
Okay, it's okay. We will work it out. We will put the microphone closer to Mariama when she talks.
Excellent.
I'm going to share the screen. So, thank you. So just to shortly introduce our presentation, we are going to be talking about life skills and the impact of life skills on youth employment. And we are going to do this, as Yvonne already said, we are borrowing some thing from the case study in Ethiopia. And at the same time, we are building on the research of Mariama, which she did during her master's thesis. And we are focusing on the impact of life skills on youth employment, and we're also trying to connect it to the concept of positive liberty to create a deeper understanding of how you can analyze life skills and its impact on youth employment. So basically, life skills is deeply connected to youth employment, and as you know, life skills is already known to work very well as an impact on young people's lives and also to create more chances on the job market. This is something we are not going to dive very deep into, but we are building, this is our departure point. We depart from the idea that it is already widely recognized that life skills is very important and that it has a positive impact on young people's lives. We want to understand life skills as being part of the supply-driven interventions for youth, addressing the youth unemployment challenge. As we know, there's demand-driven interventions and supply-driven interventions. Demand-driven going to create new jobs for young people, and supply-driven focusing on creating the skills for the young people to find jobs. So we believe that life skills should be part of an integrated program for youth employment, a program that addresses both the supply and the demand side, and a program that should be based on the gendered needs of young people. So that's where we depart from. So Edukans life skills program is based on these ideas, and we have developed a life skills program that focuses on self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, responsible decision making, relationship skills, and sexual and reproductive health rights. The program has been developed within one project in Ethiopia, and it has also been generalized for different projects, but we are now focusing on the project in Ethiopia, and it's been developed together with the trainers, and we are building the program also on needs assessment we did with young people. So as I said, the program is focused on addressing youth unemployment challenge in Ethiopia. It is part of the SINS project, and the SINS project, we have just ended it. It was a 2-year project focusing on the youth employment challenge, and it focused on creating more capacity for TVETs, but also on public-private partnerships, and it was a broader program that involved both the industrial parks, so the employers, and small, medium-sized enterprises, the TVETs, but also the ministries, so the government. So this integrated approach, and life skills was an important part. And also the life skills focused on what the young people needed, but also what the employers thought the young people needed. So we are building what we are presenting now upon findings that we found within this project. And at the same time, we are building on the research of Mariama that focuses on what makes life skills programs work in general. So she did the research on that. And she is firstly going to say something about the working elements of life skills programs.
Let me bring it closer to you. Thank you, Annick. So as my colleague Annick pointed out, I am going to focus on the general working components of life skills. It is a very known thing. It's been very upcoming in recent years, but there's very little evidence-based research on what works and why does it work. In my research, I outlined a few aspects that relate to how life skills programs can work well. So I have listed them here in the presentation. So the trainers are absolutely key, both their background as well as their approach in the methodical sense and also in a didactical sense. The second thing that is very important is the concept of infusion. It means that a life skills program is infused in the school, in the context, and it is acknowledged by local policies and governments, and hopefully it leads to institutionalization over a longer time. The third thing is planning. Oh, I'm talking very fast. I'm sorry, guys. I will slow down. The third thing is planning. Many life skills programs are kind of flexible in their planning, but research has shown that strict planning and correct evaluation and systemic approach is most effective for it to work. And the last two are kind of interconnected. That is the environmental approach as well as the contextualization. It is important to point out that we want to avoid a deficit approach. It means to avoid assuming that the youth need some kind of that they have some deficit in a way and their strengths need to be fortified. We have to assume that they already have qualities and we want to support them and build them, help them build a future. We also think it's important to involve the environment, the community, the local community, and have them tell us what their needs are and how we can support in that way. So Annick mentioned that we connect the concept of life skills to the concept of positive liberty. It is a sociological concept created by Isaiah Berlin, and basically positive liberty means it is the desire people have to master their own lives and to shape their lives in the way they want, in whichever way possible, whether that be work or in other aspects. We can connect life skills to this as it is a way to promote positive liberty, because we help them discover their talents, we support them in developing their skills, things like self-awareness and self-confidence, like Anik mentioned. And we can also connect it to youth employment, because of course employment is a very vital aspect of life. And by finding useful and fulfilling employment, you can also further develop your positive liberty and choose your own life path. But there's also a certain contradiction in this, political contradiction, if you will, and Anik will further talk about this. I'm gonna give the laptop over to you again.
Yeah, thank you. So it is very important to understand that those aspects of that make the life skills program work, and also we need to situate that within the political context. So you can't just say, okay, life skills is promoting positive liberty, but we need to understand that life skills is always done within a certain context. So the contradiction that we want to point out, we need to go back a little bit to the beginning of the presentation, where I explained to you about the life skills program in Ethiopia. The overall goal of that project was to stem irregular migration of young people. So that means we are promoting the positive liberty of young people, promoting young people to use their own agency within a project that focuses on influencing the movements of young people. So this is an important contradiction to understand. And I think this is just one example. There's many different programs. As we know, as humanitarian sector, we are always working with the motives of donor organizations, the priorities of young people, and the NGOs are kind of in the middle of balancing those two. So on the one hand, you have the donor organization with a certain motive. You have the NGO that is balancing the needs of the young people. So one example that I just want to point out to clarify a little bit this explanation is again inside the project in Ethiopia. So we have the life skills program, and one of the parts of the life skills program is focusing on creating responsible decision-making of young people. So by responsible decision-making, if we talk about that in life skills, it just means that young people have the skills to make their own responsible decisions based on the values and norms they have in their own life. At the same time, in this program, there's already an idea from the donor organization what this responsible decision is supposed to be. So we could see this also in the project itself. So it works through the implementation side. At one point, it was said to the donor, we are going to invite a returnee inside the lesson on responsible decision-making, so they can talk about the bad experience they have, so we can influence what kind of decision the young people are going to make. So you see, even in this case, it is moving toward the ground. The idea of the donor organization, we need to influence the movement of young people, moves all the way toward what is happening in the life skills lesson. So it is very important to understand this, to balance it properly. And that brings us to the final argument of our presentation. It can be just balanced by putting the young people at the center of every intervention you are doing. Of course, we all know the importance of contextualization, but it's sometimes difficult to do. So we need to see young people as people with agency and not as passive victims of the situation they are in. We need to have young people to identify their own needs, and by that we encourage the positive liberty. We can do that by having meaningful youth participation throughout the whole program. And by doing that, finally, you will balance the political motives. Because if you are having a program that is completely based on what the young people need, you can't have those things of the donor organization that want to influence the young people. It won't work through into your program because you have already developed it in such a way that is based on the young people's needs. So I think that we want to end with that final argument. Thank you. That was the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mariama and Anik. I think that was a short but powerful presentation about the contradictions that we see in such programs related to life skills. If there are any clarifying questions, please come forward in the chat. I have, meanwhile, I also have another question for you already, and that is, how relevant are life skills in bridging the demand and supply side of the labor market?
Okay, thank you, Yvonne. I think it is very relevant, as you also know. What is also needed on the job market is that young people have those social skills and the skills to communicate with others, to be good in team working, to manage themselves, to come on time, to be able to plan, all those skills, and also to understand how the gender imbalances work, to equip young women with the right skills to actively participate on the job market. I think those are all things that are needed on the demand side and that can be promoted by a life skills program.
Thank you very much. And another one, what makes life skills training an incentive to stay locally?
What do you mean?
What makes life skills training an incentive to stay local for if the SINS project was if the donor organization had the intention with the SINS project to influence the movements of young Ethiopians.
Mm-hmm.
What was their idea of life skills making being an incentive for young people to stay locally?
Okay, thank you. I think it is not life skills as per se letting people stay in their country or not move. I think the whole idea of creating jobs, that was the idea of making people stay, because then they have a job, they have an opportunity in their country, which of course is not something bad per se, in my opinion. I think it becomes something potentially harmful if you look at it. If we are promoting life skills, we are promoting young people's agency. We are promoting young people to become people who practice their own freedom, who have the right social and emotional skills to shape their own lives. But if you do that with the goal of influencing people's lives, it doesn't match. So I think that is where the issue is. And as I was saying, only in this specific part of responsible decision making, it was said, oh, we are going to influence the responsible decisions, because we already know it's not responsible to migrate. So we have to teach those young people what is responsible to do. So I think that is just the example where it didn't match very well.
Okay, thank you very much, Aniek, for that. And we have another question coming up. Was Mariam a beneficiary of the Life Skill program? And can you share some of the testimonies of young people? They are two questions, actually.
Well, no, the first answer is no, she is not.
No, I am not a beneficiary of the Life Skills program. Edukans does the Life Skills program in developing countries. And I'm
Mariam, can you please use the microphone a little closer?
Yeah.
We didn't hear you properly.
I was a beneficiary of the Life Skills program, but I am not. Edukans does the Life Skills program in Ethiopia, and although I am East African, I live in the Netherlands, so I haven't been participating in the Life Skills program. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Can you share some of the testimonies, though, of young people?
Yeah, I can.
Just a very short.
I think generally the testimonies are quite positive. Is young people, for example, saying, okay, now I think especially about self-confidence, the self-confidence, and especially for young women or young people that have some kind of challenge, they feel like, okay, now I am much more aware of myself and I know much better how to present myself. And I think from employers, the testimony that came from the young people that did the life skills program, that the people were much more timely, much more dedicated. They had a better attitude, so to say. But I think from the young people themselves, it was mostly the self-confidence and knowing also how to deal with emotion and those kind of things.
Okay. Thanks for that. And we have another, yeah, I think you're already reading it from the chat. Another question. It looks like all life skills are nice, but evidence from street kids also shows that street apprenticeship means ability to fight, to defend oneself, to be a trickster, to avoid authorities. Are these also life skills, and how do they figure in these trainings?
I think in the training we don't teach young people how to trick or how to fight or defend themselves. I think it is a different understanding of the word life skills. I think life skills is used in many different ways. The way that we define life skills, it doesn't include, let's say, those type of skills. It includes the communication and emotional skills that you need to be, like, very generally to be successful in life, not specifically to work yourself out on the streets by fighting or those kind of things.
Could self-defense though play a role, perhaps
for example,
partially in the context of sexual and reproductive health and rights?
We do have the, like, for example, saying no to sexual harassment or talking about giving personal boundaries, but this is something that is in every situation. It is not something that is only applicable for people, let's say, on the street, or it is useful for everyone, I think.
Well, thank you for that. I think it is now time to move on to the next, our final paper presentation. Thank you very much, Mariama and Anik. And let us go over to Sharon Atukunda, one of my fellow conveners also on this panel. Sharon is the CEO of Edukans Afrika, and she has worked intensively in the areas of youth entrepreneurship, transforming vulnerable individuals and communities. Over to Kampala, Ms. Atukunda.
Thank you, Yvonne. Let me share my screen. And I need some technical guidance. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you.
We cannot hear you very well. It's a little bit, can you speak up a little, Sharon? Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Much better, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I'm here to present towards inclusive agri-skills development for smallholders in Uganda, the case of Abim, Lira, and Soroti districts. This paper argues that the focus on imparting only agronomic skills without regard for skills necessary for health competition along the value chain excludes smallholder farmers from comprehensive skills development. I would like to briefly share the situation of youth participation in agriculture in Uganda. Uganda has 65% of its citizens employed in agriculture, mainly on the subsistence basis. In addition, the country has majority and the rising population, which is an emerging concern in the economy. Why is that so? 9.2% is the national unemployment rate, and the youth unemployment rate aged 18 to 30 years is at 13.3%. Now, the state of youth participation in the agriculture sector in Uganda its operations are highly inefficient. This is owing to the effects of subsistence farming, but also the engagement in the agriculture sector is looked at as the last resort. So the result of this workforce engaged in agriculture normally lacks the vision, the skills, or awareness of opportunities for entrepreneurship within the sector, and therefore does not unlock its employment or economic growth generating potential. So the conclusion of this paper indicate, just failing to, I don't know if you're able to, okay, yes. The conclusions of this paper indicate that just as agri-skills development itself is gradual, attaining inclusivity is also a process in empowering smallholder farmers with knowledge and skills. The experiences of Advanced Africa provide valuable insights on how greater inclusiveness in agriculture skills development can be realized. The extent to which smallholders judge a training intervention as inclusive will depend on the extent to which the intervention is responsive to the needs of these farmers. Therefore, achieving inclusiveness in empowering smallholder farmers calls for a context-specific lens, understanding the differences, the needs, the local context or circumstances surrounding these smallholder farmers, as well as a farmer-centered approach to skills empowerment that is alive to smallholder differentiated realities is needed or key in making the process of learning more inclusive. So how can inclusion be achieved or translated into practice? Or what kind of efforts have we done in the SEA intervention or program Advanced Africa has been implementing in ABIM, sorority and LIRA? One, for us to achieve inclusion, focus beyond VET to developing life skills is key. Farmers need to develop skills that prepare them for the market, that help them to realize other opportunities, such as teamwork, problem solving, and the importance of developing such skills will enable them to lobby for their rights, will enable them to negotiate, but also demand for services from the right stakeholders, right or appropriate actors or stakeholders. Secondly, investment in capital development, human capital development is key. We realize the need to build capacity has become a major element in the current skills thinking. So the professional human capacity development of either extension service advisors, instructors, committee leaders within a farmer association is very vital, because this later contributes to the capacity agenda, which is linked to social capital, which is linked to participatory development and decentralization. So this is one of the key things that Advanced Africa in its intervention was able to do, where we skilled extension officers in life skills for lobby, and which contributes greatly to an improvement in the quality of the trainings delivered to the farmers. Thirdly, the need to support the innovation and knowledge systems of farming or rural communities. Emphasis here really is how to build on the existing skills and knowledge of the communities and individuals so as they're able to access new ways of working. How do we support new innovative models which can be incorporated in agriculture's existing systems? So this approach is more akin to certain traditions when looking at adult literacy education as compared to the traditional approaches of vocational education and training. The other way to achieve inclusion is develop and support new partnership approaches. I'm happy to note through the SIA program, there's been lots of synergies where for some partners, they have been able, they already tested some of the value chain programs, which we were able to learn from, but then also having Edukans on board introduced us to the aspect of life skills for lobby component, which has improved the way trainings are delivered, but also has changed, attitudes and approach of these young farmers. In addition, through the engagement with Edukans, we've been able to learn the use of competence-based approach, work-based learning. This is something that is also still new, which is very key when it comes to reviewing the skills or occupation standards or training programs that are being considered or in place. Creation of structural linkages between the labor and market systems is very key. How does this enhance or achieve or lead to inclusion? One, it creates incentives that encourage private sector participation. Under the action, again, we were able to implement skills development platforms. And through these skills development platforms, it created an opportunity for farmers to interact, but also familiarize themselves with the key private sector in agri-skills extension. In addition, they were able to respond. The platforms, through these skills platforms, they were able to respond to the limited participation between maybe youth or persons with disability in the skills development opportunities within the value chain. So creating such structural linkages is very key, which gives an opportunity for farmers to acquire more skills, identify more opportunities and learn. From the policy perspective, there's need to lobby for more improved or modified curricula or demand-driven training courses, but also recognize the importance of skills development in agricultural education or training. Again, this we've been able to organize or mobilize expert group meetings with key technocrats or duty bearers that at national and regional level that influence the policy environment. And through these platforms, farmers have been able to articulate their issues, or their issues have been presented, and also their concerns, which bring out key areas which bring out key issues that emerge from skills development platforms. So this is these are some of the strategies that can be used to achieve inclusion, or that Advance Africa has also considered in its program. Now, what are the main challenges to skills development? The dimensions that frame inclusiveness, under this we mainly looked at training. So you realize that the training in agriculture in Uganda so far is still inadequate in meeting the current skills or labor market needs and condition. Historically, most of our education and training has been supported by producing extension officers, hands-on technicians who support production capacities of farmers and other value chains. But there are areas that have been lacking on how to access markets, on how to engage with market actors, and you find the challenges that farmers share or have raised looking at the findings are in areas of lack of market because of, they don't know, they lack market skills, there are low levels of value addition, they have post-harvest challenges. So many programs have come in place. NGOs have implemented a number of interventions where training opportunities exist. But what is lacking? What are some of these challenges? One, you find the content, the focus and content of skills development does not fully embrace the breadth of the smallholders training needs. So it is still lacking. It does not respond to the needs, to the gaps that the farmers are really interested or having their focus to be responded on. Secondly, relevancy of the content and learning need considered here limits inclusive knowledge. For example, programs still tend to focus more on production rather than value addition of these commodities or enterprises. So they still a limit in inclusive knowledge empowerment. When we look at delivery, key aspects that come out there are the approach to delivering trainings, the language of inclusion, the group approach, and what are some of the gaps that have been identified in there. When we look at training techniques, in many cases, there's a limited focus or attention paid to farmers who are illiterate, and this excludes them from learning, from understanding, or being aware of some of this information. But what would be key in this case, if the teaching materials used by trainers maybe would have posters or handouts, information translated in the local language, have a blend of both educated farmers and those, and encourage peer learning between the farmers, that would enhance inclusiveness of agri-skills, but that has also been lacking. Also, when you look at the group approach,
Sharon,
it is better.
Sharon,
Yes,
sorry to interrupt. Your time is running. You have 2 minutes left.
Yes. Another area we are looking at the target beneficiaries. This mainly looks at the needs of the target groups, the information gap. We have gender and mobility constraints, and also capacities, where the providers lack capacities to deliver these trainings. Looking at the methodology, this paper is based on 3 sets of fieldwork conducted in 2016, 2017, and 2018 under the SEA program that we have implemented in the district of Abim, Lira, and Soroti. And a survey was conducted, including women, youth, disabled persons who involved in co-production of millet, cassava, and maize. Key informal interviews and focus groups discussions were held with farmer association, government agencies, and national networks involved in farmer advocacy. Lastly, to bring you back to the beginning, this paper focused on the quality, relevancy, and access of skills development for young smallholder farmers. And this is premised on the understanding on how we can make agri-skills relevant to young farmers to be able to meet their needs, as well as to improve on the accessibility of skills development opportunity. Under the Civic Engagement Alliance, Advance Africa has been working towards accessing markets for women, youth, and disabled smallholders, growing maize, cassava, millet through skills development. A keynote, or as I conclude my presentation, for agriculture specifically, inclusive skills transfer effectively works or can happen in work-based learning approaches, where we have farmer field schools engagement or practice, where we have on-site trainings, where we can have volunteer opportunities, but also the soft skill. And I'm happy that the presentation that was shared before talks more on this. These soft skills are needed. Social skills, positive self-concept, communication skills, and so on are very important for a farmer to be successful in the market, and not only the technical or agriculture specific skills. We've seen young people use these skills in their lives in areas of conflict mitigation, in areas of planning, in areas of problem solving, and we believe through inclusive agri-skills, farmers are able to attain a lot of participation in the market and engage more with other market actors. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Sharon. Maybe you can also share the slides with the photos with us, just so we can take a little look.
Yes, that was a study visit. Farmers had gone to Serere at the National Semi-Arid Resource Research Institute to learn on agronomic practices and value addition. So that is a research institute. And then, yes. And lastly, you must learn a new way to think before you can master a new way to be. Thank you.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for this very interesting, a very comprehensive take on agricultural skills learning. And so thank you for that, Sharon. Just a question for you would be, might a segregated approach to skills training address the issue of gender imbalance, or more in general marginalized groups? So, for example, if women are not allowed to attend certain trainings, might it work for trainers to go to their places? So really segregating groups.
Yes, I think that is important. Again, that speaks a lot more to inclusion. And we realize that for the example you've mentioned, the gender constraints, women have a burden, you know, a lot of work and responsibilities at their homes, and others have been excluded due to cultural norms and not allowed to attend such meetings around, you know, male or male gender. Whereas there are also limitations of women participation in decision making, you know, of agriculture or earnings. So I think such an approach would be very important to meet the needs of this category, and also bring this information or help them understand how some of these programs could be beneficial to them, or how they can be able to gain from the agricultural programs designed.
Thank you so much, Sharon. That's a very interesting answer. And maybe it's now time to take the discussion a little bit more broadly, and also take on board Paul Michael's presentation and the presentation on life skills by Annick and Mariama. Obviously, there is a link between life skills or comprehensive skills, as Sharon has presented them to us, including lobby skills, communication skills, between those and talent. And the question would be, how can life skills help to nurture talent? And how can education or educational programs can contribute to the development of life skills and talent? And I would also like to invite anyone on the panel, anyone in the audience to help answer that question. It's obviously not only for the presenters. Thank you. Who can I give the floor? Antonia? No.
No, not me.
Okay.
The others, the young people. I think young people
Is there
must answer.
Anyone who would like to share some thoughts on this? Annick?
Yeah, I can share some thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Actually, what I thought was interesting, if we talk about talent and then how life skills can help maybe finding those talents of young people, I think it is really also in creating what you do with life skills is also thinking about who are you and trying to kind of get to know yourself better. I think that can really also help finding your talents if you don't know them yet. Creating self-confidence, I guess that can also really help with
working on your talent. Like maybe you will have a talent, but you are not yet confident enough to really work it out. But another thing that I thought was interesting, if we connect it to the presentation of Paul, is because he was really talking about the, let's say, the traditional view on talents and how you can connect that to the education system. So maybe Paul has an idea on how you could connect those traditional ideas on talent to life skills. If I can ask Paul to respond to that.
Anik, okay, could you please?
Please, Paul, go ahead.
Yes, please. I'm returning to Anik again. Please, could you make your question a little bit clearer?
Because Yvonne, she was asking about how life skills can help to nurture talent and how education can contribute to that. So I wanted to connect it to what you said in your presentation on how nurturing talent should be connected to the traditional ideas on talent and how that should be integrated in the education system. So I thought maybe that can be done by life skills education, but I thought maybe you have some ideas on that as well.
All right, thank you very much. For now, what I can say about connecting life skill with talents is the fact that we must first and foremost recognize that talent is fundamental. It's something that is not something you want to learn in the first instance. But life skill is something it's about teaching, training particular skills. So the connection I want to make here is that we must identify what kind of skill that we must nurture in the young person. Because if we nurture the wrong skill, we will still go back, and then it may not be, that individual may not be effective. So we must recognize the skill that is compatible that we must nurture in that individual. That way, we will be in the right direction. That's the point I can make for now.
Thank you very much, Paul, for that.
Thank you. If I could just say something also
Sure.
on life skill nurturing talent, I think through life skills, the
Sharon,
psychosocial
do you
skills.
mind switching on your camera? Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, excellent.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I was saying, I think life skills also, if we promote life skills in nurturing talent, through life skills, we are able to enhance our psychosocial, psychological skills, and I think which help the individual to cope with the demands and changes. It builds resilience, it gives hope, maybe which was the confidence Anik was talking about. And I think with that, a farmer, an individual, a young entrepreneur, a youth, it enhances on their mental and physical abilities, which enables them to realize their full potential. Thank you.
Please also permit me to say something, please. Now, in addition, you see, one of the life skills that was mentioned was communication skill, for example. Now, imagine where you have a person who does not have the ability to communicate, and then you want to train the person to be able to communicate. So you may find it a little more difficult in doing that. You may achieve it eventually, but I find it a little bit difficult for that. Funny that person may not be an effective or the best he or she can be. But if you find a person who at least has a spark of communication skill, for example, and then you now help to nurture that skill in that person through whether life skill or proper education, you find that the person becomes the best he or she can be. So the point on talent here is that it is not about people with exceptional skill, but about people with at least a spark of a particular or a specific skill that we can nurture. That's the point.
Thank you for that, Paul. I'm looking now, there is another question in the chat about competence-based learning. I would also like to go back to some of the issues that we discussed in the first session, because we haven't spoken much about the connection between TVET and the private sector, future employers. And I wouldn't want to sort of end this panel without having addressed that, at least for a little bit. So can I open the floor to anyone really who would like to say something on how to improve the connection between TVET with all its challenges, but to make that better connection with future employers, with the private sector. Anyone who would like to comment on that?
I can go.
Obi, please.
Yes, I think the idea of TVET is very, very good. And it's also very important that there is a connection or build a very good relationship between TVET and the private sector. Speaking from experience, how we engage private sector partnership here, it's for instance, in TVET, here we're talking about the vocational opportunity to like reach out to private organizations who need the basic services. It might not be very big. I mean, just those basic services of what TVET, provides or what they do in any way in Kenya. Just reach out to them. It has to be on a mutual ground. This is what we can provide. Okay, from TVET, this is what we can provide. And what you're going to provide is what the private entity is looking out for. Let me give you an example. Now, there are students who are under tutelage in TVET, and there is a shoe manufacturing entity in Kenya that pay, I'm just trying to give an instance, over $10,000 monthly for work. Now, for TVET, provides on hourly basis their entity on a lesser pay. This is one where I think
we are losing you a little bit there, Obi. I think your connection is a little unstable. Oh, I'm sorry about that.
The starting point of partnership, and secondly, in a situation where you have anywhere, entrepreneur. Can you hear me? Hello, Yvonne, can you hear me?
Your connection is a bit unstable, so it's a bit it goes up and down. Can you repeat your point again? Your final point again?
If it's fluctuating, maybe I can type.
Okay, please type.
So
that's great.
If everybody hears what I'm talking about, I don't.
Meanwhile, the connection between TVET education and the employment sector. Could the lobbying skills and communication skills that Sharon told us about, could that also help create the connections with the private sector?
Hello?
Oh.
Yeah, can I say something?
Sure, sure.
Yeah, I think, thank you so much. I'm Muyaka.
Muyaka.
Yes, I just wish to add one or two things on issues of TVET and the industry.
Please.
I think one way we look at it is, and it's part of the presentation we talked about when we are talking about knowledge broker, our own feeling, and this is the experience of Kenya, which largely represents Africa, really, in terms of the lack of a link between the industry and, of course, now the training institution, which are the TVET institutions, really. Our thinking is that there is need to enhance the partnership. And one way we can really do that is in terms of development of skills. We know very well that whereas institutions are involved in development of skills, but these skills have to go and solve a problem within the labor market. And therefore, one way of trying to ensure that there is a synergy is to ensure that the industry that require the skills are able to identify the skills, and then the training institutions are able to pick them up and now develop skills within students that are really, or graduates that are really needed on the market sector. And therefore, from where I see it, I see a point where they can really be able to engage, and this is through curriculum, whether curriculum review or development of the courses that are in use within these training institutions. That's one thing that can really be able to support. Then the other issue is in terms of
I have to cut you there because the connection is a little bit unstable, so we are losing it. The sound is very intermittent. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
Maybe you can equally write
type. I can type
your final thoughts in the chat.
That's fine.
Even though the chat, I'm not sure if the chat is still working. It should be. I would like to ask a final question, actually, and that is for everyone, really. When we talk about the formal TVET system, we often talk about government TVETs. And my question would be, to what extent do you think it is desirable for national or international NGOs to create their own TVET schools, or to support existing private vocational and technical training schools? Or should the focus really be with the formal governmental system? Is there anyone who has some thoughts on this?
Yes.
I don't know if John Mogo is still here.
Yes, I have something to say here, please.
Yes, please.
Okay, quickly. I support that non-governmental organizations should come in to support the TVET programs. For example, in Nigeria, the reason is simple. The ones handled currently by government, we find that there are no people tend to doubt the sincerity of government efforts to actually solve the problem of unemployment that young people are facing. For example, you see, like I mentioned in my presentation, that you find sometimes that government over-politicize these issues. And then you find the issue of corruption, for example, in Nigeria coming in again, where monies are allocated to promote TVET, and then these monies are siphoned by some public officials. So we tend to trust more the non-governmental organizations coming in to help and support this. And off record, not official, though you find that the TFET handled by non-governmental organizations seem to be more effective and then yield more results than those we have, for example, in Nigeria.
Thank you very much for that, Paul.
Yvonne,
and I am.
I want to say.
Sure.
I want to say
very
something.
quickly.
Okay. With the flexibility and today everybody defends flexibility, so the systems must be open with an external supervision, and this supervision may be by the state.
Okay.
You see, and TVIT must change all the time, all the time. The public system and state are usually very bureaucratic. So TVIT don't need to depend of the state, but all the system, private and public, must be evaluated and must be monitored, and maybe the state can supervise.
And then, of course, the challenge remains of how to actually bring together the knowledge and research done and evidence produced in both private and public systems. This will be a remaining challenge. We have some very young participants now on this panel, by the sounds of it. I would like to thank you, everyone. Of course, there is not enough time to discuss everything we wanted, but thank you very much for this interesting discussion. And some pending issues might still be discussed after we break up in the final, after 1:30. We have another breakout room opportunity for you in case you want to continue your discussions. But it's now also time for some reflections on our discussions today. And we're going to do that by turning findings from this double panel into a lobby message for policy action. And especially those of you, well, there's not that many, but some of you who work for government at any level. I'm not sure if we still have our friend from Kenya, Mr. Kiprio, I think it was his name. So if you work for government at any level or in an African country or in the Netherlands or elsewhere, I hope you can pay special attention to this part. Let me hand over to our Edukans lobby staff members, Rianne Driesen and Stephen Kaheru. I think it is Stephen who will take the floor. Over to you, Kampala. Are you there, Stephen? Kaheru, are you there?
I don't think he's in the meeting, Yvonne.
Oh dear. He may have lost connection. Rianne, are you able to take over?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
It's always, sometimes when it's bad weather in Uganda, then the connection is very bad. Just a second. What we're going to do is all of the papers, we've been reading them and listening, of course, today to all of the conclusions and remarks, and made a short recap into a lobby message and into a call to action for policymakers and governments, especially in Africa, to take up as a push to do something about the situation concerning employment. So what I'm going to do now, what Kehero and I have been doing, is formulating this lobby message, and I'm going to read it out to you. The best thing is if you turn on your video, and if you agree with the lobby message and following the call to action, just thumbs up. And if you don't agree, we're also happy with that. That means that we need to just put your thumbs down. So I'm going to read out the lobby message first, and I'm really curious about what you think. The lobby message. Young people are valuable agents and can be a huge resource for finding solutions to tomorrow's problems. Having a very young population, Africa has an enormous potential for accelerated growth, poverty reduction, and better living conditions. Yet the reality is that young people face staggering unemployment rates. Job security is low, and youth are restricted in their freedom to decide on their own career and life paths. This causes growing frustration. And on top of this, issues are seen with the quality of education at all levels. This is caused by lack of professionalism, a mismatch between education and job markets, deficiency in monitoring and funding, and weak interministerial cooperation. Young people need to get the skills to shape their career, their own life, and as a result, take their responsibility. Okay, and now the call to action. I really want to see thumbs after this. Governments need to, together with young people, education, research and training institutions, and the private sector need to identify skill systems that are required for current and future employment. Find innovative ways and develop better policies to provide decent employment opportunities for young people. African governments need to facilitate intergenerational dialogues to engage the youth and have an inclusive approach to meet their needs. And an effective communication strategy needs to be developed between the parties involved and directed towards the discovery and development of the talent and potential of young men and women across Africa. Young people, especially women, are ever resourceful, are innovative, and are critical agents of change in education and society.
Well, if you agree with this, maybe you can give your thumbs up.
Yeah, great. See some hesitations, which is good.
Very good.
I am going to give this lobby message to Yvonne to work on it, and we'll take it up as our lobby team.
Yes, and we will be able to share this also with you, apart from the recording that's being made of this panel today. I already saw a few documents being shared here and there, so we can share with everything that has been said. We just got a message from Stephen that he is sorry his Zoom connection failed. But thank you so much for jumping in, Rianne, for Stephen.
No worries.
That's very kind of you. We have now almost come to an end of this double panel on youth employment, knowledge and the labor market. And before we really say goodbyes, may I invite you to follow the link. It was already mentioned in the chat, to follow the link and share with us what do you take away from this panel today? What is an interesting insight for you? What is the most interesting insight, I should say, because we don't want a list of things. But it would be great to hear some feedback from what you are taking home. So please, if you follow that link, then we can see it on screen. real time. So as you are typing it.
Yes, but you of course need to go to the Google Doc to type.
Oh, yes.
And perhaps if you also have additional messages that could be translated and transferred to the policymakers, also feel free to include those spots here too.
And if you have nothing immediately that comes up, you can read what your fellow panelists are writing, and maybe something else comes up for you as well. And I'm conscious that some people may have to leave immediately after this. So once again, after this, we have the breakout rooms for you to go to in case you want to continue discussing with or meeting somebody that you saw on the panel. You can choose breakout rooms again, just like we did at the earlier break. But I also wish to say, before we have to leave, I wish to say a big thank you to everyone who worked on this panel, who prepared this panel, all authors for their very interesting papers and presentations, my fellow conveners from Include, Advance Africa and the University of Lisbon, and behind the scenes, Christian and your colleague Rowan from Nomad IT, and also Robin and Chido for your technical and content support. And of course, thank you to the overall Africa Knows organizers. And once again, I wish to mention that Civic Engagement Alliance has made it possible for Edukans to be your host today. And it was so great to see so much interest from so many of you in the audience, and it was really a pleasure to be your host. And thank you, Marlene, also for your feedback.
Thank you, Yvonne, for sharing. Excellent work.
My pleasure, my pleasure.